Welcome everyone to the first of a series of three condensed and focused discussions about the higher ego and the creative individuality. We will have a series of three, myself, Lisa Dalton from the National Michael Chekhov Association, and my dear colleague Joerg. Take it away, Joerg. Introduce yourself, Joerg. Say hello.
Hello. Hello. From Michael Chekhov International Academy, based in Germany, close to Berlin, in Berlin. And yeah, I know Lisa Dalton since, I don't know what was the first time. It was 1992 we met, and since this time we know each other in the Chekhov work.
Yes.
Welcome everybody. Welcome everybody.
Welcome everyone. So our first session today, we will be talking specifically about what is the higher ego and how does it relate to the creative individuality? What do those two terms mean? And next Monday, we will discuss the higher ego in relation to what is actually the Michael Chekhov training. How is it unique from other trainings? Why do we need it now in this period of our world? And then the following session, a week later, we will look at what is the potential of Michael Chekhov training for acting and understanding our social life. This will connect us into Michael Chekhov's vision of the theater of the future. So a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm going to start just for a moment, and then I'm going to ask Joerg to share us more about his thoughts. One of the things that I want to speak about is the nature of the higher ego is something that has very, very many potential understandings. And it is one of the most unique, in my mind, the most centrally unique aspect of Michael Chekhov's technique that separates it from all others. And in studying his work for over 40 years, I can see very simple evidence, right, in his writings that it is permeating, it is percolating, it appears invisibly and visibly in many places. And in the most famous of his books, and this is my 40-year-old copy of To the Actor, his discussion on the higher ego is, I believe, chapter 7. It's on create, and he calls it the creative individuality. And it's interesting to note that this book, To the Actor, was edited for 10 years before it was originally published. And the book, called On the Technique of Acting, was the original manuscript. And in the original manuscript, the placement of this topic before it was edited for 10 years is titled The Higher Ego, and it's the second chapter.
Yeah, that's a very interesting fact.
So, and he followed, the first chapter is about imagination and concentration. So I'm going to turn that over to you. He links it very clearly why and how concentration, imagination is linked directly to the higher ego. So Joerg, tell us a little bit, would you please, about your understanding of what is the higher ego, what is the creative individuality?
The most difficult question just in the beginning. No, I hope we can, through this discussion, come step by step to develop our overview, overlooking, or understanding of that and having a feeling of it. It's interesting point that in the lessons to the teacher, he speaks also about the higher ego and the creative ego. It's another term. And there he speaks to reach the level of the higher ego, it needs a huge concentration. This is very interesting. So it is something everybody has. We are all, of course, persons and individualities. And sometimes it is a distinguishing between the person, the personality, and the individuality. And all these terms in our time, all these words are used in so many different relations to other fields, so that one can get easy confused by it. What is what? And on the other hand, it is also always a question we know from daily life: who am I? Who am I? What is it, me? Who am I? And how can I understand myself, me? And I think most or many people in our time have already understood that our body is not our individuality, and that our body is not me. I'm not my body. But of course, I'm not existing without my body. And I have my body. And in many conversations, even in daily life, we speak more and more about such a kind of a relationship to ourselves. And we can ask ourselves, who has a relationship to myself? When I have a relationship to myself, who is that? Who has a relationship to myself? Who can understand that I am? And this is, of course, a huge philosophical question, and it gets answered in many directions. And the interesting point, I think, for us in the field of acting is also to go to the term creative personality, not personality, creative individuality, creative ego. It's also a term Chekhov is using. So it is something what is also, as an example, very nicely to understand when we read Chekhov's description about the acting of a skit. When he is acting skit, he described there that he is first doing it, very, very normal, very simple. Started his acting there. He had a very bad night before with a first rehearsal. And then something happens that he sends it as a kind of a splitted consciousness, divided consciousness, he named it later. Oh, now we come to another term. We once speak about the creative ego, the higher ego, and now we come to the splitted or divided consciousness. He described that what happens. It's very, very nicely described to see how there is a possibility to observe himself in acting at the same time when he is acting the skit, and he can lead the actor's body with the actor's voice and everything in the direction he sends how it would be needed for the moment of this acting. And he feels that he is from outside seeing himself. And I think this is also something that I feel in our time. I have spoken with some actors about that, and I think many have such a sensation, but they don't bring it together with a term of the creative ego or higher ego. But we can understand, and this is also how Chekhov worked with this term, that the higher ego, this has a connection to the field, to the world beyond the daily life thinking, beyond the daily life being, daily life action and reaction, what we do, of course, with our body and with our mind and with our soul. And then there is something what we in certain moments sense what is beyond. And we can see it in a way that we feel, when we feel inspired and when we look back, what was there? Where have I been? How have I been when I was inspired? Can I look back to it? Can I understand it? And there is a sense of this higher ego in our time. And one can say, maybe that's a very rough description, and then Lisa, maybe you go further with that, is our daily life ego, or our daily life I'm with my body, I'm with my hair, with my glasses, and I was all now with a computer and everything handling. This is also in the concentration. I'm focused on that, what is there, what is there. I focus to my feeling. I have a good feeling, I have a bad feeling. And all that is my daily life, personality, what is very helpful, what is very needed, what I need very much to develop. I have to hold it healthy and everything, healthy in spirit, healthy in soul, healthy in the body. But this has to do with our daily life, to our materialistic world, to all that. And then there is someone who can look at me, in me, with me, can understand myself, can give impulses to myself to change, even in my soul something, can give impulses even to change my thinking. And there is another way. It is this higher ego, or this creative ego. Where does it go to? And the normal personality and the higher ego shall work together, that's quite clear. But in this way, the creative ego is going out, very much out into the space. It's opening up, searching in another field, is not anymore fixing something in a certain moment, certain point. Just open up, trying to receive. And it is a way of a very strong concentration. But it's what I call the open concentration. So we have, in this way, this both individualities in ourselves, and this one is just focusing the daily life, and the other is opening up to that what is beyond the daily life, what is beyond the physical world. It was interesting. We had in a last weekend, I had 3 sessions with a theater therapy meeting, and we were just discussing these 2 streams of ego, of I, we are connected with, even in daily life. But the creative ego, I feel that this is needed to develop. Okay, I give up to Lisa.
Oh, that was so beautiful, Joerg. Thank you very much. Just really, really beautiful. So you're inspiring me to continue with this image you just had and repeat or restate because I feel it's so important. This concept of the everyday ego, sometimes referred to as our lower self, is so concerned about the material processes of life and of the art. How do I look? Do I know my blocking? How's my costume? All the technicalities. Do I remember my lines? They're all part of the material world. And this sense of the lower self has a contracting sense. When we start thinking and worrying and being concerned, we can feel that everyday life having that sense of contracting and lowering us in that way, making us harder, firmer, more bony, Michael Chekhov even says. And the role of the higher ego, and Michael Chekhov loves polarities, that higher ego has that sense of expanding and connecting us to this larger field. And he even describes this concept of the higher ego is so vast that in addition to its expanding gifts, he describes it as a fire, a flame, and that as we expand, its expanding nature, which, by the way, is continuous, it's ongoing, it never stops, it is always present, it's always collecting and gathering. When it expands out and can collect experiences, and then it's able to filter them into the lower ego and give us those impulses that Joerg was speaking about, and send us those ideas we wake up with in the morning. And he says that even the tiniest, like when we are aware of the tiniest little spark of it, it can shift us into the entire experience of inspiration. And he describes within the physical body, the location of the higher ego, or the point of entry, being right in this spot in the center of the chest. And it's not precisely the heart, but it's very, very close to the heart. And it's considered extremely different from more ancient centers that tend to come down into the Hara center. And that's a really big distinction for when we're looking to actually explore the sense of allowing the higher self, the higher ego, the higher I to play with us. One could say, so behind me I have the chart of inspired action. This is a variation of the chart that Michael Chekhov hand drew for Mala Powers that appears in the preface of On the Technique of Acting. And because of what Mr. Chekhov says about this fire, this flame, we have this state of inspired action, which is what occurs when we allow ourselves to welcome the higher ego fully into us. And in those states of inspiration that Joerg was speaking of, where we have this split consciousness, where we sense ourselves watching ourselves. And he also talks about, and I know you guys have experienced this, that we sense ourselves in the audience. And we'll talk more about that audience relation in later episodes of this series, how the higher ego connects us with them. But that is one of the central tasks of it. And this higher ego, when we work with it through our imagination, because we have it, it's living in us all of the time, the invitation that we have is to actually become aware of it and to live as if we have an understanding of it, uh, by living as if it's really in there and not just sitting on my chest where my zipper is, but it's inside of my being. And it's the part of me that I tend to point to when I speak about the I, who, hey, that's mine, or I am that. This is mine. This is where I am heading. We tend to gesture to this very point that seems to be, I would call it the entry point, or the place where that spark can ignite us. And as he says, just the tiniest little spark will ignite the entire state of inspiration. And Mr. Chekhov literally gives us 4 indications in On the Technique of Acting. He specifies 4 basic tasks, which I'm just going to mention to you. He says that the higher ego allows us to find the creative individuality. And that, again, Joerg was speaking of it. It is that sense of being able to do something unlike any other. That when you do Hamlet or you do Ophelia, you will do it in a way unlike any other. In the same way, Mr. Chekhov refers to the concept of painting a beautiful landscape. The painter will paint this beautiful landscape, and if all of us were looking at the very same landscape and painted it, we would have 21 completely different pictures. And what makes it unique and different, that's the higher self. That is expressing itself as a creative individuality, unlike any other. And that creative individuality goes beyond our body. It goes beyond our physical, material processes. It goes beyond our limited thinking. I know for myself, I was so desperate when I was a young actor to be unique and to be different, that I would get a script and I would say, oh, everyone's going to do it that way, so I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to be different, and I'm going to show them I'm unique. And I made a lot of bad acting choices, because that kind of behavior was coming out of my lower ego and my fear that I wasn't unique. At that time, I didn't know about Michael Chekhov. I didn't know, I was not aware that a higher self existed and that I could cultivate it, that I could, by actually paying attention to it, by imagining its presence within me, by imagining the fire, the light, the spark traveling through me, by allowing myself to set my lower everyday materialistic fears, like they'll never love me, they'll never think I'm a good actor if I'm not unique and creative. I made a lot of fear-based choices, and the creative higher ego is in this expansion, brings us access to the state of love, and it takes us to the second offering or function, Mr. Chekhov says, of the higher ego, which is the discernment of good and evil. And in that discernment of good and evil, we are able to be compassionate. We can play evil characters, and we can also see different, what we might call uglinesses in the world. Maybe the coronavirus we're experiencing now is an ugly thing, but maybe it's a beautiful thing. And our higher ego allows us to find that beauty, to be able to see the polarity, to be able to discern between good and evil, and to activate our compassion. And for myself, I was able through Chekhov to develop a lot of compassion about how many bad acting moments I had and can still have. you know. And so the third function Michael Chekhov talks about is that the higher self allows us to connect with an overview of all that is happening in our time. That what we spoke of before, that being able to be with the audience and to connect with our social world. And we will go more in depth in this in the following episodes. And the fourth function that he states in here, in specifically in on the technique of acting, is that the higher ego is responsible for our humor. And he invites us and shares examples of how many highly connected people who are highly or strongly connected in their everyday life with their higher selves have a great deal of objectivity about the world, and therefore can create a great deal of humor. Lightness and ease is one of the pathways that he offers to find that sense of humor. So the focus today, so those are the four, again, just briefly, that we have a creative individuality, that we can gain the ability to discern between good and evil. 3, that we can connect and understand our time and our role in the social order, and we can find a sense of humor to bring forth our work. So when we understand what those are today, we're really looking at the nature of the higher ego and its relation to the creative individuality. To the actor, I feel like his chapter is using both those words. And now I'm going back to where Joerg began, which is there's so many words for this. The creative individuality is used almost interchangeably with the concept of the higher ego. And in on the technique of acting, what I'm understanding is that it is because of the higher ego, which is even a more broad term, we have the ability to know and express this creative individuality. And so I'm going to close my section and toss it back to Joerg, and just with saying that, as I learned, the most important personal message I had about creative individuality is to know that it exists. It exists. You need to do nothing to make it exist. It is already within you. And all of our work is about allowing it to express itself. For me, I see my study of Michael Chekhov's work over 40 years continuous. I'm continuously studying to work to peel away everything in my lower ego that actually stops my creative individuality from expressing itself and turns work into cliche, into habit, or into some fear-based choices. So thank you, Michael Chekhov, for helping me become aware that there is a higher ego and we all have it. Joerg?
I'm back. I'm just was going to another book, but I'm so sorry. I'm sure they are not in English. They are just in German, and they are both for the German people who can understand German. They are very, very interesting just for this question. They don't come from the acting. They come more from the Goetheanism signs, and one is from Wolfgang Schad, the double nature of the I, the double nature of the I. What is a very interesting understanding that I have the double nature. It is my nature to have both. And he gives in another second book the peripheric view. Peripheric view, that's a German book. I don't know if anybody of you listening to us is comfortable with German, but this is also very, very important to understand all this problematic, because this is what we have learned in our times, is to go focused, to go analyze the things. And so also when I started with acting and was learning in my directing school and had also the acting, we had a kind of analyzing the characters. And there was very much psycho stuff in it and social stuff. Of course, in East Germany, it was all the psycho was related to the social circumstances. This is, and we analyzed it. And this is our tendency in our time. And this is something what many actors are also struggling with. They won't understand by analyzing and using knowledge they have learned, or they take knowledge from specific understandings of human beings or something, for instance, psychological understanding. And with the old knowledge, one would like to understand a character and want to create something new. This is a funny contradiction. How can come out something new out of the old? Yes, I know there's many things saying against it, but when the purely combination of all things don't bring something new, there needs an idea, a new inspiration. And this new inspiration is not coming out of the old things. It comes out of someone who is perceptible to this inspiration. The conditions that this inspiration can work lays in the things itself. But to perceive this, what is beyond, this is coming from the understanding, this is coming from the inspiration, this is coming from another layer. So it's never logically. This is what we also find in the acting and in the art. It's never logic. It's always, hopefully, crazy unlogic. It's so different from making it in the right way. But in our life, even me, got that very much, make the things in the right way and be the best in the right way. And this has also taken part for the art, and this is just opposite to that, what Chekhov means. We have sometimes a question, what you was talking about, this trusting, what is for the artists, for the actors, and not only for the actors, also for other artists. A big question, how can I trust that I will get an idea, that I get a new, unique idea? This unique idea only can come from my creative individuality or from my higher ego. This unique idea is not coming out of combinations of old things, of old knowledge. So, and this is a practical question. How can I trust, learn to trust this creative individuality in me? How can I explore it? And this is of course, always not and to answer in general in this way, but the interesting thing is also what is not here. In here he gives exercises Also, and there's one exercise I like very much. Um, this is exercise 12. It's exercise 12. It's so simple exercise. It's so funny. But he gives this exercise that one can get a beginning sensation of how does it happen that something new comes to me, that I do something in a different, new way, that I get, even when it is a little inspiration, that I get an inspiration. And to explore that by doing. So that's very simple. You can read that in later fully and with my other classes, because it's so funny. Choose some very simple business, bam, like cleaning the room and so on. And repeat this action at least 20 or 30 times. Why? I know how I clean my room. Okay. Each time avoid repetition of any kind. People who have studied with me know I have transformed this exercise in a more structured way. But this is just to give one a provocation to explore it for oneself and to learn to trust oneself. I will ever get an idea. I will find an idea. I always will not get lost. And the other thing what Chekhov gives is in this direction, the active waiting. What happens with the active waiting? I'm concentrating to the question, and the question I have in a direction of a creative development, and I'm concentrating on that question. It's also very interesting, concentrate on a question. What is that a kind of concentration? It's not to concentrate on the words. I have a question, I concentrate on the question. So I'm very much concentrated in the way of openness. And wait. That is what many people, of course, have experienced, and everybody is also speaking about that. It happens to you. It happens to you. Inspiration happens to us. We can't make it, but the inspiration comes through the openness of our creative individuality, or let's say through our higher ego, what is searching in this field where all the ideas, sounds a little bit idealistic, this field where all these ideas are still existing, and we bring it down. And maybe this is important to learn to trust this quality and to make some explorations in this way. And I think many of the exercises of Chekhov have just, at least all, have just this question in the background. The exercises are so organized that in each exercise one can explore a different side of the creative individuality. This is a fantastic thing with these exercises. And thank you, Lisa, to focus out these 4 functions just so on the list. That's very good, because this is what we will come back, I think, in the 3rd meeting. This is also a very important part, the function of the higher ego, to with the 4 functions he is describing.
Yes, great, Joerg. I was last night thinking of whether it would be a good idea to offer what I call home play rather than homework with that exercise that you were just speaking about. And when I worked with Deirdre Hurst Dupre, who was the person who wrote down all of Chekhov's notes, and certainly Deirdre was one of the people responsible for our lessons for the professional actor, and all of the archives we have at Dartington Hall, etc., helped him write on the technique and was one of my teachers. So she, for our creative individuality exercise, and her variation of this was called 20 chairs. And we had to at least 20 times approach a chair, have a start, travel to the chair, do something at the chair, like sit down, pick up a magazine, open the magazine, read it, set the magazine aside, stand up, and walk back to the beginning. And we had to do that 20 times. So that's a specific example of this, picking a little activity and repeating it and allowing your creative individuality to inspire you. And so I would like to encourage all of our guests today to think about that. And perhaps you'd like to do a creative individuality exercise, as Joerg was mentioning, and as I'm suggesting, whatever it is. You could do 20 chairs, or you could come up, of course, with your own, and to experience the active waiting. And one of my suggestions is that you try to do it long enough that you run out of things to do at least 2 times and wait actively, so that at least 2 times in your progression you kind of run out and think, oh my gosh, where am I going to get an idea? And you wait actively. This idea we spoke of the higher ego being in a state of continuous life. When we lead our imagination with questions, that imagination is, if we're allowing it, is directly influenced by this higher ego, that even when we're busy in our material world, our higher ego is still active in processing those questions. So when you ask the higher ego a question and wait actively, sometimes it can be 5 minutes, sometimes it can be a month. It will give it to you in the perfect time, at the perfect moment, when you're ready to receive it. Like the old saying is that the teacher will appear when the student is ready. So your higher ego will appear when you're ready to receive it. I saw a question from Dawson. The question was, would you say that the creative individuality is the fruit of the integrated individuation process, guided by the higher self, come to its zenith? Wow, Dawson, that is so beautifully phrased. And I would say that you did say that. And I think it's a beautiful statement, that the higher ego works to support us in finding our creative individuality and allowing it to come through. And when we are fully living in it, we are in that surprising process. We have no idea. The we, that is the lower self, has no idea what we're going to do next, and yet we do it. And that's always the state in those peak inspired moments, that we didn't know what was happening. We had no idea how it happened. We rarely even remember what exactly happened. So if you guys would like to uptake this little offer to play at home with this, to explore and contemplate your own higher ego, I think would be great. Ophir, I wanted to check with you to see if you might have any particular questions that you wanted to ask. I'm unmuting you, I think. Unmute.
Now, do you hear me?
Yes.
So hello everyone. I just wanted, now I have a question that is very specific to 20 chairs that you mentioned now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mean that, sometimes the director tells me, do it in 3 different ways? Come to the stage, sit on the chair, open the notebook, read it, and then leave it. So do I need to do it 3 times in 20 chairs? Do I need to do it exactly, physically exactly the same, or the same qualities, or I need to find something to direct myself? Do you know what I mean?
I do, yes, and it's the how. So you establish what Chekhov calls the necessities of it. So the director says you need to walk to the chair. The director says you need to pick up the notebook. The director says you need to open it and you need to look at it. You need to close it. You need to put it down, and you need to leave the chair. And that's what the director tells you. Those are the necessities. So your creative individuality gets to figure out the how. The director gives you the what, and you get the how. Maybe the playwright gives you the what, because you have to say, oh, here it is, I found it. What those are the necessities that you get to meet, but how you meet those to the smallest detail can be influenced and inspired by your creative individuality. So yes, the details need to be met, but the actual way in which you turn the page, the way you reach, do you go direct? Do you go indirectly? Do you pick it up with the fingertips? Do you grab it with, all these things? It's possible to think that and strategize and plan it. If you do it and it comes out exactly the way you planned it, then you know that you crafted it through your lower ego. Mm-hmm. And what you're looking for is to be
bypass
it. Bypass it, yes, and to build that trust, which is, ultimately the entire Chekhov technique is designed to do this. Mr. Chekhov says that every aspect of the technique is actually working to help you come in contact with your higher ego and your creative individuality. So does that help, Joerg?
So I need to go just to go with the task, the business, and with the impulse, the creative impulse on the moment, and not think about it, not plan it, or okay.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
Yeah, I would say you can strengthen it for yourself. You give your a task, you give your business. This is a what. This is very clear what you have to do in the right order, and that this shall happen. It has to happen. So 3 points, I don't know. Maybe you go to the chair, you sit on the chair, then you look under the chair, and then you get up from the chair, and then you turn the chair, and then you go away. That's the what. And the how is now that you do it this 20 or 30 times, he says, each time in a different way, but you fulfill the tasks. And when I give this exercise, I give it in the way that I say, all what you have thought before is forbidden to do. I create a threshold for yourself. It begins crossing the threshold, and then you can follow. But don't think before, because then you work just to your lower ego, with your lower ego. You do it out of a concept, and you can't catch the sense of what is an inspiration. And I have experienced that the first 3 times, 4, 5 times work very well. And then comes what we call in German eine Durststrecke. Then comes something, you feel very dry, you have no idea. You do it and then you think, oh, I have just done what I have thought before, and this feels boring. Go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. There comes a moment and then you will feel free after several times, and then you explore. In the end, after 20 or 30 times, you explore, oh, I could do it 100 times in a different way. I feel now I can do it, everything. And this is it's very simple exercise, but it's very inspirational in this way. So that just in addition.
Yes, beautiful. Marielle is asking if our higher ego can help to keep us healthy. And maybe there's a nice exercise for good health and connecting to our body. And thank you. In these times, it can be very helpful to add something to daily meditations. And when I work to help us grasp a concept of the higher ego, I talk about an element that was revealed and never really translated into English, about the image of a sphere, the higher ego creating a sphere around us that we can actually travel into. And with that, that sphere contains all of what we need. It contains all potential images, all potential atmospheres, for example, and all potential qualities and states. So to be able to imagine we can connect that sphere with this sun spark of fire light that is within us, to expand us in a kind of meditative way. Imagine we can connect with that sphere and we can actually inhale beauty, inhaling beauty and inhaling a feeling of ease with the current form that is across the entire planet. There is a form, a new form that has come this way. And with that form, a great sense of uneasiness and a sense of darkness. And so connecting to that sense of the light, the fire, the inspiration, and knowing that during this time we are in a cocoon. We are in a cocoon and we can cosmically come out of it as beautiful butterflies. And if the more we can hold through our higher self, a sense of calm and peace, that sense of discernment between good and evil and sense of compassion, we can begin to work with the higher ego and bring us a sense of health and calm. That location of the higher ego that points into the body is right at the thymus, which controls our immune system. And so when we activate our awareness and imagine that we can expand and increase its presence, we don't need to wonder whether we are. We can say we are. We just say, I am that, I am. And doing the actor's march is a great gesture for that. I am a creative artist. I have the ability to radiate. When I lift my arms above me, I soar above the earth. When I lower my arms, I continue to soar. And in the air moving around my head and shoulders, I experience the power of thoughts. In the air moving around my chest, I experience the power of feelings. And in the air moving around my legs and feet, I experience the power of will. I am that I am. And with that, we're going to close this up. Joerg, a few closing words for us.
I would like to add something from a different point of view to this question.
Please do, yeah.
Because it seems just in our time and with this crazy situation, something important. And of course, what means health? To being healthy, healthy has not the meaning of absent of any sickness. Healthy is a more complex thing, and healthiness is touching also the mind, body, and soul. It's not only healthiness in the physical body. Healthiness is, of course, in the soul, and healthiness is in my mind. What is my thinking? Do I have a healthy thinking? I can, from my experience, I would add to this what you said, Lisa, and answer to Maria. Maybe it is also a question others can have. She was asking us, when we do the psychophysical training exercises of Chekhov, and when we do that with this awareness that we are always try to explore something in it new, that we never do these training things in a way that we think we have to make it right. That I always try to explore in a new way. I do, again, it's the same exercise we have spoken before with the chairs. I do expansion contraction again and again. And all the time I'm asking me, what do I explore here? How is it? And how can I sense the relationship to the space? What does it do to the space around me? What happens there? I'm always exploring in this training moments, what am I doing? With my lower ego or with my daily life ego, I do the movement and I'm of course aware that I not throw the lamp away, pushing anything away. I'm very much aware in the physical space. But at the same time, I try to observe, center in the chest, of course. I try to sense what I'm doing. How is it? How does it feel? Was my foot in the right stepping? Was my foot also expanding? Or was my foot contracting? What is happening here? What do I want? Then I'm just working with both together. And all the psychophysical training happens in the field of our living forces. And when I do this training, I activate my living forces. And the living forces are this field, what gives me healthiness, what heals me in the daily life understanding. So I think doing the Chekhov training in general, you will always stay in health. It's a little bit too much said, yeah, because healthiness and sickness has also to do with the karma. And this is something, what is a different field. But with these exercises, with the psychophysical training, I'm absolutely sure you develop your healthiness.
Thank you. And so we're going to gather same time next week, and we're going to go into our next question, which will be about what is it going to be about, Joerg? I was doing so well there, and then I...
What is the specific of the Chekhov technique? What is a training? What does a training? What do we develop through the training? And what happens with us when we work with the Chekhov technique? And what is it, and how can we understand it in the deeper meaning.
Yes, and I want to invite everyone. There's a Facebook page, if you do Facebook, called the International Michael Chekhov Association. International Michael Chekhov Association Facebook group. And you can request to be in that. And you could, if you like, post any feedback you have, any report you have on your little practice, on your home play.
Yeah.
Tell us what you discovered, and then we'll try to have a little bit of time when we gather next week to get some reports, and you can tell us a little bit about it verbally, or if you want to write it in advance and then just cut and paste it in the chat if you're not confident with your English. But we're so excited you were here with us today. Please let your friends know about next week, and we will be posting this so that you'll have access to it. Joerg, any thoughts before, or you want to sign off?
Thank you very much for everybody who was joining, and please give us a short review, a short echo, that we can also develop our conversations.
Thank you.